How many musical theater artists does it take to clap on the same beat?
But let's get to our main topic for today. We're going to talk about our journeys, because the journey to getting pregnant, to having a baby, is different for everybody. There's a million ways of going about it, like we said last time. And so we wanted to share the different experiences. I'll kick off mine because mine is just more that we decided that we wanted to try having a baby or to stop trying to not have babies, because that might work. But when we decided that we were going to start having babies, we just started trying to have babies. So, and it took a little bit. We had to clock into the cycle, what her cycle was, and sort of shoot for those windows. For our first one, it was surprise. We were fortunate; it went pretty quickly, and for our second one, it took a bit longer, and we had a false positive at one point, and that was a little disheartening. But we were able to, we rebounded and kept trying, and it was actually I think the time that it clicked, that it worked, was actually right around the time where I was feeling like maybe that like we're done. I was sort of taking some of the false positive and the longer time as a little bit of a sign of like, hey, maybe it's just not meant to be. And that's okay because we have a fantastic older daughter. But then it clicked, then it took, we were pregnant. So it's a pretty boring story for me, but now we'll go over to Christopher. You guys, just recently were started trying. What did it take for you?
So I know for us, it was, when we got married, it definitely was a conversation because I've mentioned in the last pregnancy, my wife was a little older. And so it was definitely something that was, like we definitely had to have a serious conversation about it, because whether or not it was feasible that it was going to happen or not, and if that was okay. And and ultimately, I've always kind of I've always had the standpoint that at the end of the day, you can always take the action and you can like try, but it's not for me or my wife or anybody to really say whether or not it's going to happen, except for, we are people that believe in God and we believe in a higher power. And so that's kind of where I come from. And if you are not one of those people, then that's fine as well. You believe what you want, but I always just believe that at the end of the day, it's for whatever my higher being to decide whether or not it was going to happen or not. And so we, when we got married, we had talked about we wanted to try, and our timeline was definitely shorter because we couldn't wait forever. And so we had preemptively gone to fertility doctors just to get everything tested out, just to see where we were and what was going on. And I was fine, and Megan, was just we were normal, healthy adults for our age. There was nothing crazy going on anywhere either way. And so we were like, okay, well, we got married, pandemic hit, then we got married. And so we decided we might as well try, because we figured it was going to take a while for it to happen because of her age and because of what was going on. So we did IUI. And
so Chris, tell us what IUI is.
It is something that I still don't fully understand, but I just like.
What part did you have in it? Let's say that.
I just showed up. I just showed up to the doctor's office, and they handed me a cup, and then and then Megan came later, and I think basically I'm pretty sure it's if I understand correctly, what it is they take my seed and they help impregnate Megan. They give her some drugs that help stimulate egg production, and then they inseminate her at the doctor's office. So it's not quite IVF, which Benji will get into more. It's in between. It's like the first step. It's basically like if you were to like go to a fertility doctor and say, we would like to get pregnant, we think we're going to have problems, then like the first step they'll have you take is this, because it's the most natural of the scientific ways, if you will.
When you go to the fertility doctor, do they start asking you about like how long you've been trying, or can you just say, we think we're going to have trouble. Can you help us out?
So insurances actually won't cover it unless you've been trying for X amount of time, depending on like what the state mandates are or what your insurance mandates are. So the interesting thing about it though is when we had the procedure done, they told us to go and, and do it that night. So we actually don't know if it was the IUI or us. So we can choose to believe whichever we choose to believe. All of that to say was we were under the impression that it wasn't going to take a while. It was actually that it was going to take a while for us. And then we did the IUI and then she was pregnant. And it was like, oh, okay. And then, so, yeah, exactly. We were like, all right, nailed it.
How long did it take?
So the procedure happened. We, did what they asked us to do. And then 2 weeks later, we took a pregnancy test and it came back positive. And then the next day, she went to the doctor and got a blood test and it came back positive. Then a week later, she went back and got another blood test. And then like from there, they'd see if like some certain hormone keeps raising. And that she went to the doctor once a week for, I don't know, 3-4 weeks. And then we finally got to a place where we could listen to like a heartbeat, and that happened. And then it kept progressing, which is probably the most fascinating part about all of it, because she got pregnant. And so there was, for at least the first, I don't know, 8-9 weeks, I was just kind of preparing myself for it to just not work, because it's like running a race with an egg on a spoon a little bit. Like you're just like, you're kind of running around rocky terrain with this egg on a spoon. And once you get past a certain amount of weeks, then it becomes like a smooth road. But so I was just kind of half waiting for it to just be like, well, it was working and now it's not working. And we're here, and Megan will be 20 weeks Tuesday. And so like, it was just like, okay. Was this still working in first try? Okay. We were not like, we really thought it was going to take a while, and it didn't. So, God has a sense of humor.
When you were preparing yourself thinking it wasn't going to work, did you think, was that like preparing yourself emotionally, or was that preparing to comfort Megan more? Like, what was that process like?
I would say probably more so the latter than the former, but a little bit of both. I don't know. It's hard to say, because I think that it was so whirlwind, and it was so like, oh wow, this is actually gonna happen on the first try. And part of it also too is like, like it, in a weird way, there was a lot of guilt involved too, because especially like when I think about like, Benji's not the only person I know that has gone through multiple years or tries of IVF and it not worked. And when I had we have another friend who lost a child, like that was like well along, and lost a child that was going through like IUI and IVF and stuff. And so I guess I was trying to prepare. I was like getting prepared, just like, okay, this may be something we need to like deal with. But also like, I felt like, well, why, like how the first try really, like that's, like, I almost would have rather, in a weird way in my head, I would have rather it had taken 3 times for us and less time for others. You know what I mean? Like I would have traded that. Like I would have traded 2 more shots for like Benji to have 3 less, if that makes sense. And so like, it was a weird guilt that I had to deal with as well, because like I felt like I was like, I don't know if I felt like I didn't deserve it to happen on the first try, like, but I got through it. I'm super happy and excited because everybody's having babies, and my friend who lost that child, she had a baby that was born, and she's been super helpful with us and in our little team baby that we've built up, and and Benji's about to have his kid, and so like it's all worked out. It's been great, but yeah, it was a very weird cornucopia of emotions to kind of rifle through. So yeah.
Benji, I know this has been quite the road for you. You mentioned last time that you've been trying for close to 10 years, it sounded like.
Something like that. It's, I mean, we kind of pulled the goalie, so to speak, around 2011, I think. And then from there, basically, we were really trying in earnest. In 2013, we started to get a little worried. Like Chris said, like you try for a significant period of time before you go see a doctor, and so we went to an IVF doctor, and we are just now pregnant with our first. So if you're looking at the timeline, it's something like a decade that we've been trying to have a kid. And we've been going through IUI. We did a number of rounds of IUI first. We first did timing method, where you like track Danielle's cycles and temperatures and hormones and try to make it the old fashioned wink way like David. And then we went through a number of rounds of IUI where, I give a sample and then they try and do it timing Danielle and giving her a trigger shot. And then,
so how is Chris's definition of IUI compared to yours? Is there anything you want to clarify or expand on?
I mean, I don't know that it is a weird experience going into an office and speaking with a receptionist who knows you're about to go masturbate in their bathroom. I mean, that is an odd moment, to say the least. But everyone's pretty professional about it, and
in a pandemic, mind you. Right. Just gonna throw that out there as well.
There you go. Yeah,
that's probably the cleanest that cup has ever been.
At least you had a mask on covering half of your face. You wouldn't ever recognize you on the street.
Well, but that's the thing, is I almost felt like a bank robber in a weird way, coming in with like this mask on.
Yeah, we got to the point where we would get the cups at home, and I had to like put it next to my body and bring it into the office to keep it at temperature. Anyway. So then IUIs, and then we went into IVF, where they retrieve eggs. Well, we have to go through a whole bunch of hormone shots to stimulate my wife and grow a whole bunch of eggs. And a doctor goes in surgically and sucks those eggs out of her ovaries and then freezes them after combining my sperm with them and watching them grow for a couple of days. Then they take the best one and put it in Danielle and then freeze the rest. And we ended up with something like 8 embryos that were viable on the first round. And they only implanted one at a time for us because of Danielle going through some health issues. And then none of those worked. So the cycle goes where you have to get the mom all hormoned up and ready and trying to make their uterus as sticky as possible. And then they thaw they thaw all the embryos and look at the best one and take that best one and inject it into the mom's uterus. And then you sit and wait for 2 weeks like you, Chris. And every time we did that, we had them either printed it and put it into an envelope that we would pick up, or they would leave a voicemail, and then Danielle and I would get together at the end of the day, hopefully in like a nice spot. We tried to figure out to kind of soften the blow if it was bad news, or to be in an awesome place if it were great news. So we were like in the middle of a lake one time when we opened the letter, and we were I think we were in all sorts of really lovely places to try and celebrate. And it just kept being no, unfortunately. We did have one successful pregnancy that lasted for 6 weeks. And at our 6-week ultrasound, I believe, there was no heartbeat. So there was this really terrible moment where, as a new dad, you're all expectant, and I like even had my SLR camera to like record the heartbeat, and I was really excited. And we got there, and my wife is a doc, an OBGYN, so and she knows. So I was like expectantly waiting with my camera to like get the first picture of the baby, and they couldn't find a heartbeat, and the ultrasonographer like left the room and didn't say anything. And Danielle just knew, and she told me to put my camera away and held my hand, and that was a tough day. And then it took 5 more years of IVF rounds to get pregnant this time. So,
hey Benji, I'm curious, that time you guys were pregnant before, you guys posted about it.
yeah.
Right? Like you guys shared the news, and I remember probably being one of hundreds of people that loved it and reached out and so we were so happy. And that's earlier than, especially for I don't know if she was a geriatric pregnancy at that point, but
Not whizzing yet.
Yeah, but did you guys, what went into the decision to post that early, knowing that the risk was still there, that something could turn out?
We conscientiously did that because the conventional wisdom is that you wait until you're 12 weeks or 13 weeks pregnant, until like the first trimester or some on why in order to either shield yourself from everybody reaching out if there is something that happens wrong, or to shield your community from ever knowing that there was something wrong. In general, at least that's how we interpreted the conventional wisdom. But there's a real flaw in logic there, because when you need your community and when you need people around you is when the tragedy happens. And when it happens in that tiny window before you really even got used to the idea, that's like exactly when you need to be talking to people. And exactly for us, when we needed the 400 people to post on our Facebook that they loved us. And, we didn't want to suffer in silence. And I think that that's what the conventional wisdom for hundreds of years has been, is that you just suffer in silence. And we didn't want to have anything to do with that idea, because we are communal people and we need help sometimes, and when we really needed help was when we were going through the shit. It's not like suffering by ourselves. We kind of opened ourselves up to the idea that perhaps there's a better way to do it, and we certainly got a lot of benefit from it. But there are two sides to every coin. I mean, our Facebook for 6-7 years was a source of pretty depressing posts for people, because we were so open about it.
That's beautiful.
I will say that we took a very both approach to that, because we definitely didn't post it out to the world, because part of it, the decision we made, is we didn't want our families worrying, and we didn't want that.
Yeah, we played game night with you, and I think we made a comment about something. I remember when you finally told us, I was like, we just played game night. Wait a minute.
But we did tell people, like, we had a group of maybe 5 to 10 people that we told right from the beginning. And that way, and they were all people that had been through IUI, IVF, things like that before, so that we knew that they knew what was going on and all that stuff. Like Benji was one of them. We had other friends that Megan had some friends, and I had some friends that have gone through it. And so we definitely made sure to have a group with us. And so I'm with Benji on that. Like you do need somebody, because if it happens, you need to have a community. And so I fully support that, whether it be your entire Facebook world or 5 to 10 close people that you want to keep there, you definitely should not try and get through this without any sort of tribe around you.
Right.
Yeah, for our first daughter, we told our immediate family for very similar sentiment. Like the way we were phrasing it was like, if this doesn't stick, these are the people we would want to comfort us. And it was just our immediate family, our parents, our siblings. And then we told the world once we got after the 3 months. For our second daughter, with Kateri being over 40, there was a lot more risk medically that the doctors were talking about. And so part of it for me, at least the second time, was like, I just want, I like that a little part of this is ours for just us for a moment. But the vast majority of it was, this is risky. We don't want to get our older daughter's hopes into this and get her fully attached and then have something happen. And so we waited, and like I said, we told her first, but for very similar sentiment that first time around. So I'm glad I asked, because that's what you said, Benji, is beautiful. And you're right. Too many people suffer in silence with miscarriages or struggles.
In every aspect too, kind of going off you, David, that like little moment where it's just you, like also people, especially through IVF and any sort of struggle, like people will inevitably say inadvertently the most insensitive thing that they could possibly say to you when you're like, opening yourself up to the world as well, so there is some danger there, but so I see both of your guys's philosophies and ways of going about it being really great. But we ended up persisting. We found through some testing that perhaps some of our egg quality wasn't great, so we ended up adopting a cohort of eggs from a donor, in fact. And that's another weird process to go through, to say the least. Imagine online dating with profiles where everyone like has their genetic information and any diseases of their entire family and pictures of them as kids and all this kind of stuff, and where you start on that journey, right? Like, how do you pick someone to be your egg donor? And there's like arbitrary things that you can do. Like you can listen to their voice recordings of how they answer 12 questions, or you can just go on looks, or you can filter out, I want red hair and green eyes, and like I want somebody who's this old, and somebody who wants to be able to be found by the kid if you want to, and and all of the things. And so you start having to like be really interested, have these weird conversations about how to pick an egg donor, and this person's pretty, or this person's not, or I don't like that, or like how surface level do you get, or how deep do you get? That was quite the journey, but we were very lucky to find somebody who we think was a great donor.
Do you want to share like what you focused on, like how you filtered certain things?
Sure. It's hard to not sound odd when you talk about it, but looks was a thing for me, I guess. You just I started on people that were, I guess, attractive to me in some way or shape or form.
Were you looking for someone that looked like Danielle?
We thought about that and went through that conversation, and we did gather, or you kind of like people, and then you like save ones that you like. And we didn't pull the trigger right away on buying eggs. So some of the people that we really enjoyed or had like higher levels of education, which is super important to us, and things of that nature. And then genetic profiles would just disappear, right? Because somebody else bought their cohort of eggs that was available. So just like in dating, I guess, in the real world, like sometimes you find somebody that's perfect and hits all these barriers for or these bells for you, but then they just disappear because someone else takes them, right? So that's kind of what it felt like in a way. And hopefully we made a good choice. And we got, similarly with IVF, we got 5 embryos out of it. Went through a couple more, all of the rounds of them left, and on our very last egg from our donor, Danielle is currently pregnant.
Woo!
Yeah. So long road. Lots of twists and turns and books read and support groups and Facebook posts, and a lot of what Chris was talking about with like the hope is sometimes the worst thing that you can have, you know, because it just gets crushed over and over again. But also it's the only thing that you do have at times. So I think psychologically you start to dial back your excitement level about things so that you're not the guy with the camera waiting for the heartbeat when it's not there. But when you do get there and you can be the guy with the camera, it's that much better. It just really is a really cool moment. And seeing 3D ultrasounds of your baby and having your wifey get bigger and bigger. And even though there's like issues and stuff along the way, it's like just the most beautiful thing that could have ever happened to us after so much struggle and so much pain. And they call it a rainbow baby after you go through such a storm. So we've been calling our baby RBG, either a rainbow baby girl or a guy. And also, Danielle was inseminated like a day before RBG died. So she may or may not be the reincarnation of RBG, but no pressure, you know. So that's kind of the story.
Benji, you mentioned that people inadvertently would say the wrong things. I'm sorry if I was ever one of those people. And B, are there things that in your experience, or at least from your opinion, like folks should not ask or not say, or should ask or should say to a friend or a family member that's kind of going through something similar?
Sure. It's tough to know what the couple is looking for when you're giving advice in such a difficult time. And I think that that's where people would benefit from focusing on, is not assuming that they know what the couple needs, but maybe asking for it, asking what they need, instead of trying to give the hope. Everyone always wants to give you hope, and sometimes you just don't want it, right? So a lot of people will be like, oh, as soon as you stop trying, it's going to happen for you. That's what happened to my sister. And you're like, that's not what I need right now. Or I feel like I'm trying to stay positive, and I'm not particularly coming up with the negative things that people said, but I remember the really positive things that people did. Like,
yeah, like
people just sent food, like DoorDashed us food when they found out, or they just like did some random act of kindness. They didn't ask what we needed. They just like did something wonderful, you know? So I guess I'm giving contrary things by saying ask, but don't ask. But saying if there's anything that we can do was never very helpful. just doing something kind was always really helpful. But then, there's lots of books on it too, if you have family members going through it, that can probably label out some of the things that like are no-nos or that people hear and have negative responses to. I can post them in the comments. I'll post a couple of the ones that helped me or have helped other friends. I do recommend support groups too. There's support groups everywhere for people struggling with infertility. We didn't frequent them, but when we were really struggling, they helped a lot. And so did counselors along the way.
So you did go to the support groups, you did get counseling.
Yeah. For a lot of infertility, prolonged infertility, a lot of docs require that you go see a counselor and make sure that everything is okay, or that just to help with strategies of dealing with the constant or the reoccurring nightmare, So I would recommend that, but it's an evolving journey when you're doing it, so what may have worked with your first loss was completely the wrong thing for your second, and for the third you needed something entirely different, or you wanted to dig deep or do all this testing on this side. It was a road, and I'm happy to talk about it with anybody if people want to talk, but I'm happy that we're here.
Benji, this is the most I've heard of this story. I imagine you two had been talking during different aspects of it, but it's the most I've heard, and it was beautiful. It was really just bare, and thank you for sharing. I think you said some wonderful things in there that are exactly like part of why we're doing this, like part of why we're talking about it. Not easy, I imagine.
If anybody does want to reach out or has questions or anything like that, if I can be of any help to anybody, just drop it in the comments, or reach out on Facebook or something like that. I'm always willing to chat about it.